Okay, so the first topic, part one, the core technologies, Zoom and Google Apps. So one of the questions that has come up really often here in these past couple of weeks, when people are trying to use Zoom and get access to Zoom, is how to sign into Zoom properly. So when you can install Zoom from the USF Zoom website, which is usfca.zoom.us. On our USF Teach site, which is listed at the bottom of the slide, we have directions on how to download the software, install the software, and what I'm going to show you is properly signing into the software after you download and install it. So after you download and install Zoom and you launch it, it'll look like this. The screen will have the basic Zoom window to either join a meeting or to sign in. You want to click sign in, of course. Then you're going to reach a login box. And you're going to want not to sign in here where it says sign in with your email and password. You want to click the button sign in with SSO. Now, other people have said, can I just sign in with Google? But we want sign in with SSO so it goes through the university's single sign-on authentication. It'll take, when you click sign in with SSO, it will take you to the screen to enter your company domain, and it's simply USFCA. Just type that in and then click continue. It'll take you to the My USF login page to sign in with your USF username and password. After you sign in, it'll take you to the Zoom software. Now you're going to see a little icon that's your account name, or it'll be like your photo. If you click on it, in that menu, it should say licensed or pro. If it says basic, you sign in with a basic account. Sign out and sign back in with SSO to get the licensed features. The basic account has far fewer features than the licensed account. Okay. So very, very important. This is true for us as faculty and staff, but also true for students. Students should sign in through SSO to get the full features because they may be wanting to schedule meetings with their classmates. And if they only have the basic account, it limits them to 40 minutes with a group session, okay? All right. Next, just some engagement things within the meeting. So you're in a meeting right now with the shared desktop, but what if you want to engage? So we're kind of modeling that in this session here where we're kind of deciding how we want engagement to work. In this case, we want everyone to use the chat feature. So there's a button, the chat button at the bottom of the Zoom toolbar, and you'll see the chat window come up on the right side, and everybody chats here in the box at the bottom. Everyone sees it, and everyone can see the responses in turn. So that's one way. The other way is if you maybe have a smaller group and people want to speak, then there is a participants panel that the students would see. As an instructor in your hosting, you would see managed participants. And the managed participants area, you would see the list of all the students in the class plus the instructor, and then there's a button to raise your hand. So just as students in class would raise their hand and the instructor would call on them, you could do the same thing virtually. And really it's to kind of moderate and to create some order and some decorum in the discussion. Nobody's talking over each other. Everybody has a say. Everybody has space to speak. Okay, so just a couple of things to think about in terms of engagement. And we'll talk more about that later in terms of best practices. Just want to show you those tools in the beginning here. Okay, so let's move on and look at some of the instructional and best practices for using Zoom. So online synchronous lectures, scheduling your class. So there's a couple ways to do this. You can schedule your class through the Zoom app, and you can schedule your class through a Zoom integration in Canvas. Now, if you've never signed into Zoom before, if this is your first time using it, then what you want to do is make sure that you're signed into the Zoom client first before using the Zoom, the integration in Canvas. It's looking for an authentication. If you've never activated your account, you want to do that first. But two ways to schedule. We'll show you criteria for scheduling, like video on or off. Do you want the students to be able to enter the room before you as the instructor? And then how to communicate the scheduled class to the students. All right, so let's first take a look at schedule a class through the Zoom app. So here I've launched my Zoom app, I've logged in, and to schedule a meeting, click the schedule button. What it'll do is it'll bring up the schedule window where you can type in the topic. This case is class 5 meeting for next Thursday. I put in the date, the time of the class, how long the duration is. If I want to use my personal meeting ID or use random ID for each meeting. You know how sometimes you go into a web conferencing meeting and it's like this random number, but that means that's a unique number only for that meeting. If you have, if it's for your class, maybe you want to use your personal meeting ID. So the number's the same every time. For video, it's a class, it's meant for engagement. You want video on for both yourself as faculty and for the students. You want to see them and they want to see you. Now for audio, there's choices. Telephone connection, they can call in, connect via computer or the Zoom app on their phone, or both. Now I've selected computer audio for when I schedule it in here, but there may be some students that maybe don't have access to a computer during the time where they would need to connect for class. Now, the only thing if they dial in is they're not going to see anything. So you have a class that has presentations or you as an instructor are going to show content on the screen, they're not going to see that. But if it's a class where it is discussion, and verbal interchange, then that might work out okay. I always recommend a student always connects via the Zoom app, whether by phone or by computer. But I always leave it as telephone and computer audio, both options open, just in case. And then you select a calendar. You select your Google Calendar, and then it'll place the invitation, it'll place the date and time on your Google Calendar. So it's scheduled on your calendar. So when you click schedule, it'll open up a web browser and take you to your Google Calendar. So that's scheduling in the app. Now there's also an integration in Canvas. So you notice here that I've got Zoom as part of my course navigation. So there's a way to enable it, and then you can schedule classes in here and they show up in the list. So you as an instructor would click on start. The students, they wouldn't see schedule a new meeting or start or delete. They would see a button labeled as join. So they could join the meeting from right here. So in terms of communication, when you do it with the app, you could put the event on your calendar. You get the link that creates it that's created for the meeting, and you could post that, copy and paste that link into an announcement, into a module, so that the students can click on it there. Or you can do the integration, and the students have it all right here. You have it in one place, the students have it in one place. Then all you have to do is send out an email or an announcement saying that, hey, for our upcoming sessions, click on the Zoom link in the Canvas course, look for the scheduled meeting for our class time, and then click join. And then you would click start to start the meeting. So just kind of a quick look at that in terms of the two ways to schedule. Let's pause for a moment. Angie, are there any questions about scheduling or signing in?
I think this is a question that's come up a lot. And so you could answer in general. Is Zoom already in Canvas menu, or do they need to add it? So if you could explain if it's automatic or they have to add it.
Okay, I could show the demo real quick because I have the video. So let me bring up, let's see here. Where do I have it here? Here we go. So here, I took a screenshot video of it. Here's my Canvas course. And so let me play it. And so what I do is I go down to settings at the bottom and click on settings in my course. And then it'll probably default to course details, but you want to click on the tab navigation. Then there are two sections, the active portion and then the hidden portion at the bottom. Zoom is in the hidden portion by default. If you click and drag it and bring it up to the top and then scroll down to the bottom to save the changes, it'll become part of the course navigation. So you can see that from my list here now, it's part of the general navigation with all the different tools. So if I click on that link, it ties into my Zoom account, and here, and I've already got some meetings scheduled, but I can go ahead and schedule a new meeting. Go ahead and title it. I could put in any information in the description if I need to, right? Any kind of prompts for some things to remember to consider when you first get in. Then I can set the date and time. And the duration of the session. Time zone is usually set. If I want to do a recurring session, that's going to be like, every Tuesday or every Thursday. I could say end the scheduled meetings after 7 occurrences or 3 occurrences. So you can do that too. I'm going to make it just a single one, so I'm going to uncheck that just to keep it simple. And again, see, here's video on for both host and participant, audio, both computer and telephone options. Here I've enabled the choice to enable the students to join before the host so they can get into the room. I'm going to disable that option, enable waiting room. I can use my personal meeting ID if I want. Check or uncheck it if you want. You can mute the participants upon entry as a default, and they would have to unmute themselves to speak. Set my criteria. You can add an alternate host. If you have a TA, you can add their email address. So when they sign in, they're listed as an alternate host. And they would have the same host duties to help you, say, like with the chat. I won't have one here, so I'll take that out. I click Save. It confirms my choices. When I click on the Zoom link again, and there's the week 6 class. So that's how you can do it in Zoom. Now, for instructors, so you see the start and delete, all the administrative stuff. But as a student, I have a screenshot of that. They see join with the information. They can't schedule anything. And if you record the session, they're also going to see the cloud recordings for those sessions here too. So you can schedule it here. You and the students can access it here. And if you record the sessions, they can access the recordings right from that tab. So it makes it simple, okay? I have instructions on the USF Teach site on how to set it up and schedule. Okay, hopefully that gave you a good view of what that looks like. All right, let's continue on. Now, Angie, were there any specific questions before I move on to some of the best practices?
Yeah, there's one about, will students see those meetings set aside for class, or how does that work?
Yes, it will. In fact, if you look at this screen, see, they only see the ones that you scheduled in Canvas. If you scheduled any other meetings through like the Zoom app, we showed that scheduling through the Zoom app, those do not show up in this list. So we have individual meetings like with a specific student, do it through the Zoom app, and invite them in the calendar event. That way, those meetings are private between you and that student. Anything that's scheduled here shows up in this list, and only the ones that are scheduled here will show up here. And if you have multiple classes, you schedule it in each class, they will be separate for each class. So it makes it a nice, organized way to schedule meetings for this time. Okay, good question. All right, so online synchronous lectures, live online class setup basics. For you as an instructor, dress appropriately. You're gonna be dressed for success in class, dressed for success for the online meeting. Good background, no backlighting, just so your video is good, is nice and clear. Have a quiet place to host the meeting. You don't want to have your dog barking or some other neighborhood noise going on. You want a good quiet place, so no distractions, and good clear audio for your students. Close any unnecessary programs. Email client, use Outlook. You have like your Twitter client. You have a chat client open. Anything that has a notification, I would close it, because you don't want those notifications to come up during the session and pop up and say Pilates class in about 2 hours. You don't want that to happen. You want just the focus to be on the class. Then conversely, open everything that you need to show for the class. Your PowerPoint presentation, maybe you're going to show a website. You want to show an application, a document. Open them all up so there's no waiting. There's no waiting for things to load. Everything's ready to show. And then you can just move from presentation to website, back to presentation to show the document, and everything that's on the screen, and just as you would in class. And of course, do a tech check. Get into the room early to make sure that the camera and microphone are working well. Maybe you want to have a student come in early as your test to make sure that they can hear everything okay and they can see everything okay. So do a little tech check. If you have a TA, you can do that with them. Maybe you have a student, you can say, hey, you know what, can you just get in a little bit early so we can make sure that everything's going to be ready to go when class starts. So just good practice. Microphones are key. This kind of goes in place with the use a quiet place, to have your session. If you have a headset, like if you have a smartphone with a headset that came with it, then that's always good. Or if you have like a headphones with a microphone, then that's always good too. If you don't have one and you need one, we do have a limited supply at our ITT office in Gleason Library lower level, G02. Email us and let us know if you feel like, yeah, I think it'd be better if I had a headset, and we can put one aside. Like it's a limited quantity, so please email us if you need one. And then when you speak, make eye contact with the camera. You notice I was not doing that. It's just good engagement. You're going to be looking at the class in the classroom. So same thing in the virtual classroom. Make eye contact, engage with the students visually. And that's why it's important to have your video on so you see each other and engage visually as well as audibly. Okay. All right. Let's move on. Actually, any pressing questions, Angie, about best practices for you as the faculty?
Where can they email to get headsets or equipment?
Oh, sorry. Yes. itt@usfca.edu. Sorry about that. I forgot to mention that. Okay. So again, more tips, during your session. I tend to speak really fast when I'm in front of people or on a session. I need to be sure and slow down a little bit to make sure that I speak clearly and concisely so everyone can hear. So important. You want it to be that way in classroom, especially true online. So speak clearly and kind of maybe do a test with somebody. Just kind of do a test with a colleague to see how you sound online. Sometimes you just don't know unless you hear yourself and you go, oh my gosh, I'm speaking like super fast. And you know, okay, maybe I just need to slow the tempo down a little bit. It's a change in culture. It's a change in kind of like your personal preference or just the natural way of speaking. I had to learn that when I started doing presentations at conferences. I had to slow down to make sure that people could hear me. Add natural breaks during your lecture. When we showed the two engagement kind of tools, chat and raising your hand, if you have a graduate course or a master's course, sometimes those classes are like weekend classes and they're 2, 3, 4 hours long. Take natural breaks during your lecture. Want to give your students a break and yourself. Find those natural breaks in your presentation and ask students for any questions. Maybe have a short discussion using the different strategies. Either chat the questions during the lecture portion, and you can stop and say, hey, let's take a look at the questions that were gathered here. And you can talk and discuss about it. Or you can stop and say, okay, we're going to have some, if there are any questions or anything that was unclear, please raise your hand and I'll call on you. So you create some order and decorum in that discussion. So natural breaks. Use your mouse to kind of indicate things on like a slide. So if I'm talking about speaking clearly, maybe just kind of underline it like this, or if you're showing an image, don't just say, as you can see here, or there this is, here it is. And you might have heard, I actually did that. I said, look here or click here. And so if you're online, you're going to go, well, where's here? What are they pointing at? Use your cursor to kind of be visually descriptive and be orally expressive. Check the third point. Use your mouse arrow to point to important concepts so that visually and orally there's connection with the content. And of course, repeat questions. Maybe a student's on their phone and it is a little bit more difficult to hear maybe their classmate asking the question. So you as an instructor can repeat the questions just so to reiterate what the question that was asked and then go into the answer. Okay. Again, it's a little bit of a culture difference. It's not like it's in the live classroom, but it's just to ensure everyone can hear, everyone has a say, and everyone can speak. Okay. All right. Any other any pressing questions, Angie, before I move on?
Can you, there's a question about, can students actually see your mouse? So just kind of checking in, can everyone see Ken moving his mouse on the desktop?
Right, now it's interesting because if you're not the host and you're a participant and you move your mouse, people don't see that. So it's the host that has the cursor that's seen. Okay, so good question, good question. Okay, let's move on. Student expectations. So, the students probably have expectations of you as a faculty member of being online and being engaging. Well, there's expectations that you should expect from the students too. And these are very similar. Dress appropriately, like students would in class. Use a quiet place. So say if they have something to say, there's not like their roommate's conversation going on in the background, their dog barking, somebody washing the dishes. Use a quiet place to reduce or eliminate distractions. Okay. Angie had used the example. She said a faculty member, they had a Zoom session and the student attended, they were in bed, just in their jammies, just relaxed and chilling, but it's very distracting. You don't want the students to come in like that in the live classroom. They should come in and be professional, be adults, and then so it's all about the class and there's no distractions. And also too, they should do a tech check. Maybe they're going to just make sure that everything's connected properly. Their camera and mic are working properly. So when they enter the room, they're going to be ready to go. And mute their microphone. A lot of times you're going to have lecture first, maybe discussion after, or if it's all discussion, even then, you don't want to just have your mic open, because if they're typing on their keyboard, you might hear that. So unless they're speaking, have them mute their microphone unless it's their turn to speak. That way there's no other extraneous noise being picked up by open mics, um, that cause distraction. And we talked about this before, video on, it's all about engagement. You want to see them and they want to see you. So they should have their video on, you know. If they have it off, unless, there may be certain situations where a student may feel very uncomfortable. There's a certain situation where say, I can't have my video on, but they need to come to you outside of class, before class, and talk to you about that and to set up some arrangement. Okay. And then this last one, we just started seeing, when Zoom started really becoming broadly used, we had, it's not just students, but we would have people coming into meetings, joining the meetings from their phone, driving a car. Now, one, they would maybe dial in and they're driving, and so you can hear the car noise, but also two, they might connect via the Zoom app on the phone and they're driving. So please, please, please discourage your students from multitasking. If you're coming to class, don't be driving. It's dangerous and it's a distraction. People are going to be worrying, is this person going to crash, instead of listening and engaging with the content. It's just a distraction and it's dangerous. So no driving while you're Zooming. Okay, so anything about the best practices from faculty to just in the session and student expectations. Angie, were there any questions or comments about that before we move on? Okay, fantastic. All right, moving on. Facilitating student participations. So we kind of went through this, and all through the best practices. And again, just to reiterate, chat, raising your hand. You may want to use both. Maybe you want to use one. I had one law instructor. He did his first class and he said, during the raising hand and chat, it was just too much. There was so much, conversation going on in the chat. It was just too much. So he made a decision to say, we're just going to go vocally and we're going to do it in order. Raise your hand. Another instructor said, I just can't deal with the vocal, just the interaction. They did it all by chat. Some are doing both just to make sure that the highest possible engagement is there. It's your choice. Decide what's going to work out best for you. Start small. Maybe you just want to do chat just in the beginning, or maybe you want to have just raise their hand. Decide what's going to work best for the class, class dynamics that are in your classroom. Okay. Now this third item, breakout rooms, and we're going to kind of demo this. We're going to kind of demo this at the end so you can kind of experience it as a student. But Zoom allows you to create breakout rooms for small group work. So if you have small group work in your class and they kind of divide up and they go to separate parts of the classroom, you could do it virtually too, by creating breakout rooms and assigning students to these rooms, and they have their own private conversation where you also, as the instructor, can drop in, check in on them, come out of the breakout room, go to the next one. You can send broadcast messages. It's a really great tool for that type of engagement. And always remember to repeat the question. We talked about it before. Don't assume that people can hear everything. If it's an important question, repeat it so that, and just to reiterate what was being asked. Okay. So just some tips on facilitating the student participation. Now, this is just some screenshots of the breakout room. So the breakout room tool, we enabled it for every account on campus. So you have it by default. When you open your own Zoom meeting, and you want to try this after, after the workshop, maybe over the weekend, get some people together and Zoom together and try these out. But when you go into a Zoom meeting, at the bottom, in the toolbar at the bottom, there will be a tool called breakout rooms. When you click on it, it brings up this dialog box. And I don't have any participants, but say you have 30 participants, divide into 2 rooms, 3 rooms, 10 rooms. You want groups of 3. You can decide how to break them up. And you can have Zoom assign them automatically, randomly, or you can manually assign them. Say if you have a couple of students, you go, no, those 2 should not be together. You can manually assign students to their separate rooms. And then when you create the breakout rooms, it'll give you a list. And here even after you reach this portion, you have 4 breakout rooms. You can reassign people. So you go, after doing the automatic one, I'm going to start reassigning people and moving people around. And then once you do that, the button for open all rooms will be active, and you can click on it, and it'll send them out to their rooms. Now, when you first click on it, every participant is going to see a dialog box saying, join breakout room 1, join breakout room 2, join breakout room 3. They click join and they'll move to the breakout room. Then you as an instructor, you can click on that tool again, because everybody will be off in their breakout rooms. You'll just be in the main session by yourself. You'll see the list of breakout rooms, and you're going to see a button to join each room. And so you can join each room and then have say, hey, you know what, any questions you have for me about the discussion, leave the breakout room, join the next one and the next one. And so you can kind of touch base with them just as you would walking around class, visiting each small group. There's also, in this same box, is a tool at the bottom called Broadcast Message to All. And so when you click on it, you can send a broadcast text message to all the rooms. Maybe you forgot to add an extra prompt. Just sending you a message, please also discuss. Or you can send just notices like, hey, 5 more minutes, then we're going to close the rooms. Then when you close all breakout rooms, close all rooms, there's a 60-second timer, and to allow them to wrap up, and then they return to the main session. So I just want to kind of show what those dialog boxes look like when you activate those tools. Okay. All right. Angie, any questions? And we have excellent documentation on the steps to creating and using breakout rooms on the USF Teach site, the Teaching Through Emergency site. So be sure and check those out. Angie, any specific questions?
I can, yeah. I just want to clarify for everyone. You will not see the breakout room option now because you are a participant. Only when you are hosting a live session, then you'll be able to see the breakout rooms. Yes. Also, if you would like to stay after for a little bit at the workshop, we can demonstrate it so you could see the student end and how that looks like within all the different rooms. And other questions here is, how can someone share a video and then stop it to ask questions for students?
We're going to show that a little bit later. It's kind of a combo demo. It's recording a presentation, but it also shows the example of sharing your desktop, and especially if you have a video that you're going to share that has audio. How do you share that so that the students can hear it as well as see it? So it's a good question. I'll kind of demo that a little bit later when we get to that section, because I show a demo of how to share your desktop, how to enable to share computer sound so that you can do that. Okay?
One more, couple questions. One is, can students share videos in breakout rooms? And the second question is, does it work in an iOS environment such as an iPad?
I don't think breakout rooms are enabled in there. I'd have to take a look at that. That would be really challenging to have a, now if they're participating, then they'll be moved into the breakout room. But if you're an instructor, I think the best practice would be do it on the computer. Okay.
So one more question.
Yes.
Can students share videos in their individual breakout rooms?
Yes, there should be, and we'll demo this. There's the share screen is also in the breakout rooms, so you can share content between each other while you're in the breakout rooms too.